All right, good morning, everyone. This is Stavros Anthony, Nevada Lieutenant Governor. I'd like to call the Department of Transportation Board of Directors meeting to order. It's October 14th, 2024 at 9:30. And let's do the roll call.
All right, good morning. Governor Joe Lombardo, Lieutenant Governor Stavros Anthony,
Here.
Controller Andrew Matthews,
Here.
Member Virginia Valentine, Member Frank Lepre,
Here.
Member Justin Cowell,
Here.
and Member Gary Perea.
Here.
Lieutenant Governor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Item number 2 is public comment. This is the time for public comment for any items on the agenda today. There'll be 3 minutes for each public comment. If you'd like to call in, it's 775-888-7440, or you can do it in person. So I'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. Is there somebody here that would like to make any comment about an agenda item? Come on up to the podium, and you have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Craig Madole. I'm with the Nevada Chapter Associated General Contractors. Item number 6 on today's agenda, we have some concerns with the interlocal agreement that's being proposed. As proposed in the packet, it names Zayo as a construction contractor for this $35 million project. We are of the opinion that this agreement would be void ab initio under NRS 624.700. This agreement and this scope of work would require a licensed contractor under NRS 624 to be awarded this contract to enter into any subcontracts and to perform this scope of work. So we would ask that the board consider pulling this from the agenda, or if it is considered, to please reject this agreement because it is not consistent with Nevada law.
Thank you. Anybody else in this room would like to make public comment? Anybody in Las Vegas there to make public comment?
No one here, Lieutenant Governor.
Okay. Anybody on the phone or internet or email or anything? Okay. I will go ahead and close public comment. That's item number 2. Item number 3, director's report.
Well, good morning, everybody. And we're going to start off. We've had a series of, we'll be talking a lot about many emergency activities had over the past month. Next slide, please. So the Davis Fire Collaboration, this actually started September 7th and went a full 18 days. And NDOT was deeply involved, although NHP led the coordination with the state agencies and the National Guard. But NDOT was called in. We were focused on the road closure, the timing, and then follow-up cleanup. We had to dig pretty deep, actually, because of the length of the fire and how close it was to the highways and jumping over. We dug pretty deep into the department to get volunteers for the road closures along the way. We also not only did we close the roads, we provided traffic control, helped with the evacuation. We also provide generators for the lights, computers, and the traffic signals. So as the energy was went down, we had to put the generators at the traffic signals to keep them going. And we also provided Starlink because the cellular service was closed down in there. So we played a vital role, but it just kind of, I just want to give a shout out to all of our volunteers that were out there. They did a tremendous job, and really, they did us proud. The next slide. We're preparing for winter. We usually say when we put the plow down in April that we start preparing for winter then. So we're stockpiling all the salt and sand, getting in there. And this year we're leasing a snowplow simulator. And you can see in the bottom that I got to do it there, and it actually is quite realistic as far as I will have cars coming at you. They will have cars going in front of you. They have animals crossing the street. They have people going in there. And they did tell me that if this gig doesn't work out, that I could be hired as a snowplow driver. So it's good to know I have a backup plan. The next one, this is just to basically put it on record here that we did cancel the design build procurement for the Henderson Interchange project. And I want to make it clear that we canceled the procurement. We did not cancel the project. Bids just came in considerably higher than we were expecting. And we will continue work on the utility relocations, but we are working with the city of Henderson on a path forward, and we'll build it out in a multi-phase project. Bright Line West, this was we hit a major milestone in that we NDOT signed the agreement with the Federal Rail Administration for the $3 billion. Very anticlimactic because it was DocuSign and I was sitting alone in my office and click. But it is a major milestone. It allows them to go forward and get their funding. And I know that they've already been reaching out to the contractors that they have in place and getting the bids. And like I said, their funding in place. Next slide. With Formula One coming up, it's just acknowledging that we have been working very closely with the F1 representatives, also with Clark County and the resorts in the area to ensure that the work that we're doing on Tropicana, everybody knows what to expect and that we're supporting the activities and working with them. So the northbound I-15 off-ramp to Tropicana, along with the Tropicana Avenue on-ramp to southbound I-15 is closed. There are 4 lanes open on I-15, 2 lanes open in each direction on Tropicana. Frank Sinatra Drive is open and 1 lane in each direction on Dean Martin. And Joey Bishop Drive will be open, which will provide some additional relief to the Dean Martin. Next slide. This was also kind of a culmination in the last 3 months. We're highlighting an issue that is just more commonplace, and it's impacting the traveling public and the freight movement across the state. All 3 of these fires that you see here, July, August, and September, were battery fires. And even though 2 of them were out of state, it really impacted the traffic to the area. So next slide, please. So in July, we had the one on I-15 in San Bernardino County that closed northbound I-15 for 48 hours on a weekend. And the traffic had to be detoured through Arizona and then coming back up. And, it was detoured on a route that was a 2-lane route that really didn't have the supplies, the resources to keep. They didn't have the fuel, they didn't have charging stations and on that. So there was a lot, people had to be care flighted out. There was about 16 care flights out for medical emergencies. And then we also had to go back in and make sure that we, working with Arizona and California, of course, had to go in and provide gas and charges to the cars to get them moving. And then on I-80, it was again on the other side of the border. It also caused a great fire in that area along there that caught more land on fire. So we were closed for about, I think it was about 16 hours eastbound I-80. They held the trucks and traffic was then went down around Lake Tahoe. And then the last one was on 95. This was just a few weeks ago where it was closed for several hours. It was near Mercury. And again, had a detour. And as most of you know, we don't have a lot of redundancy in our system. So when you detour, it's not like 15-minute detour. It's multi-hours to get around. So with this in mind, the governor had a summit, a lithium summit, which was very timely. This was about 2 weeks ago, where it was a 2-day summit, and it went from everything from describing lithium, how it's fine, how it's mined, recycling efforts. The university has a lithium hub. They're looking at different methods and energy part. And then also, along with Chief Steinbeck from Clark County Fire Chief, we were also on a panel discussion to talk about mitigating things. So it was kind of like full circle of when it came around and just how we can work together, things to look for, things we need to do and work on in the future just to be prepared. But he also made a very good point, the chief, was that, each time that it's just something new and we're learning how to deal with something new. So he said, fossil fuel fires are just as bad and other ones. So they're doing a lot of working forward, and James Settlemeyer, the Director of Conservation and Natural Resources, was also in there, and he's looking at different ways, again, like how do we actually handle a fire when we're out there? There's a lot of new technology there. So basically just saying that we are working on it, we're looking very strongly at it, and then the day after this, Congressman Mark Amodei also held a meeting with Clark County representatives, again, Chief Steinbeck, and a number of federal agencies looking to see of what kind of resources, federal resources, we also may be able to use to perhaps look at doing a statewide strategic plan. That is something that Director Settlemeyer is looking at. And then just where do we put our resources and how we prepare for it. So next slide. This one is kind of neat, very different. We received, I should say, the Department of Transportation received uh, um, a, an industry award, the 2024 Industry Award, that recognized leadership in responsible cultural heritage management, highlights advocacy for policies protecting historical and archaeological sites, and acknowledges collaboration between the public and private sectors to safeguard cultural legacies. I do have the award here, and I'd like to have Cliff come up here in a minute. If you wouldn't mind doing a photo with him and there, but he did 3 different documents, and they prepared, and it's looking at the Victoria Highway, and then also the Lincoln Highway, and the the um, the Mexican mine in Virginia City. So it really looks at the context, the historical history of it, documents it, and then they prepare the work for this to go into the National Register for Historical Places. So it's nominated through SHPO, which is the State Historic Preservation Office, and then it goes to the Nevada History Board and then to the National Registry. Cliff? Up. Frank, would you come on down, please?
Congratulations.
There you go. You can hold it. But it's still between the flags.
Yes. And you guys here.
You can get her too.
Yeah.
Make Frank look tall.
Congratulations.
All right,
Thank you.
congratulations.
And then on the last slide I have, we're just kind of making a notice on this, so you'll be hearing a little bit more. We'll be devoting a little bit more resources towards some of our the NDOT infrastructure, which is really our buildings. Most of them were built in the 60s, or some of them even older. So we're doing a lot of the Wadsworth Rest area, we have to replace the entire septic system. It's failed. The Eureka maintenance station has been condemned. The employee housing, you can see some of it, there's holes in that, so that needs to be updated. And even here at headquarters, we will be replacing all the plumbing on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor. So just really kind of a notice that it's just hitting its end of its life, and we need to invest some more funding into it. So that's it. That concludes my report. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions from any board members on the director's report? I have 2 things. Number one, on the lithium. So are we going to focus on first responder training on
Yes.
these incidents and who's supposed to go there and who's in charge and who's going to do what, that sort of thing, because this is brand new?
Yes. Deputy Director Gomez is looking for training for NDOT personnel on there. We're also looking at funding for training, other things we can do around the state. And then the strategic plan was actually that I referenced. We want to define roles and responsibilities, because typically in the more urban areas, like Clark County has more resources. And it usually would be fire who's actually handling the incident. But if you get out in the rural areas, typically it's NDOT who's first on the site. So we want to make sure everybody is aware what they need to do, what precautions they need to take to keep not only the traveling public safe, but to keep them safe.
Okay,
So the answer is yes.
great. And the other thing is the Lincoln Highway Historical. I'd like to get Travel Nevada involved in that,
Okay.
kind of make it a tourism destination in Nevada. So maybe we can get some Travel Nevada stuff going on there. So if you could reach
Okay.
out to them, that'd be great.
Yeah.
All right, anything else on the director's report? All right, seeing none. All right, we'll go on to agenda item 4, approval of the September 9th, 2024 minutes. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Lieutenant Governor, this is Andy Matthews. I will move for approval of the September 9th, 2024 Department of Transportation Board of Directors meeting minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, that was Frank, second. Any questions or discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, we'll go to section 2, the consent agenda. The consent agenda has items 5 and 6. Does anyone want to pull any items from the consent agenda? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pull item 6 since we had public comment on it, and I think we need to spend a little bit of time just explaining what that's about. So let's pull item 6 to be held separately. So any questions on the consent agenda, which is basically item number 5? All right, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
This is Gary Perea. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Andy Matthews.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, motion carries. So we'll go to section 3, which will be agenda item 6. So let's go ahead and have a public hearing on item number 6.
Okay. Assistant Director Jay Pullen will go over this.
Good morning, Board. This is Jay Pullen, Assistant Director of Operations. I appreciate Mr. Madole's concerns and hopefully I can address them. I just wanted to start off to say and recognize that Mr. Brian Mitchell, the Director of the Governor's Office of Science, Innovation, and Technology, is present in the Las Vegas office in case there are specific questions that need to be addressed towards him. One of the things I wanted to mention is that this is covering US 93, specifically an OSIC grant that an NTIA grant that we received. This is the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. And I just wanted to mention that OSIT for the Governor's Office of Science, Innovation, and Technology is the lead state agency, and NTIA is the lead federal agency. So with that said, there was a state purchasing procurement for a vendor, and that vendor was recognized as Zayo Group LLC. From that point, Zayo has selected Tilson, who is the general contractor for this work. And just to kind of highlight what's going on in this procurement, the telecommunications vendor that was selected had to meet certain qualifications, basically identifying that they had the capacity, expertise, and skill set to design, permit, build, operate, and commercialize the telecommunications. So we are talking about a utility on interstate in certain portions. For 93, it's shared with I-15. So with that question in mind, I just wanted to make known that Tilson is the general contractor who will have the contractor's license to perform the work. One thing I think would be important to address is that Tilson has not identified the contractors, the subs that will be performing some work such as traffic control, blowing fiber, and other specific boring, restoration, and testing. So there will be contractors that will be hired through the procurement process. Those RFPs have not gone out yet as of now. So what I wanted to share here is that this agreement is an interlocal agreement specifically between a state agency and a state agency. This is not an agreement to award $35 million to a contractor. It's to basically give our contributions to this state program to install fiber and to basically give high-speed internet to rural communities. And I'm available for any questions.
Was Brian, is that who you mentioned? From the governor's office? Okay.
Director Mitchell is correct.
Director Mitchell, is anything else you wanted to add?
He's approaching the podium now, Lieutenant Governor, if anybody has questions for him. But Mr. Mitchell, did you have some comments you wanted to offer?
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor and members of the board. My name is Brian Mitchell. I'm the Director of the Office of Science, Innovation, and Technology in the Office of the Governor. I don't have anything specific to add, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, this is Stavros Anthony. So as far as you're concerned, everything is in order on this agenda item?
Brian Mitchell for the record. Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else you want to add, Tracy?
No, I think Jay did a good job.
Are there any questions or comments from the board on this agenda item? The only thing I can add is I just last week drove to Ely from Las Vegas, and the internet sucks up there. So this is going to be very helpful.
We agree. We were
Yeah.
I mean, we were excited about I-80, but we're more excited about 93 because
Yeah.
it still has a lot of dead spots.
Okay, not hearing any
I got a
questions.
question.
Oh, yes, sir.
So Jay, the contract is with Zio, and they have a contract with your general contractor. Is that what you're saying?
It's a very good question, member. What is going on is that, so the lead state agency is the one that's got to meet all the federal and state requirements, and that's why Brian is here. So in this case, OSIT has entered into an agreement with Zayo as a telecommunication provider. They're the vendor. And at that point, the contractor is responsible for hiring contracts to follow the NTIA specific requirements and state requirements. So really, the only thing NDOT is doing at this point is entering into an interlocal agreement with OSIT to basically fulfill our obligations as part of the grant application that was submitted.
So is the contract with Zayo through NDOT or is it through OSO or whatever?
The agreement with Zayo Group is with OSIT and not
Okay.
with NDOT.
Okay, and on their contract, what is Zayo called? Are they called a vendor or are they called a contractor?
In the procurement, they were identified as both a vendor and a contractor, I believe, in the documentation. As far as the scope of services, they're responsible for the design and construction and the maintenance and services provided. So it is an umbrella. It's not just a contractor. There's many facets. Also, the public outreach and basically to fulfill the last mile where Zayo is going to be working hard to work with other agencies and whatnot to get fiber to the homes and businesses. So it's not just construction work. And I think the intent here is that at that point, they're going to move forward with Tilson as a general contractor to move forward with hiring other contractors, subs to do specific work for the installation of the fiber.
I understand the intent is good, but my question is NDOT or the state doing something illegally when they have you're saying that Zayo is both a contractor and a vendor and they don't have a state contractor's license. So shouldn't they already have a joint venture with Tilson? So everybody's by the rules and regulations that we have in the state, or are we just going to bypass some of the rules? And it's a legal question. It's way over my pay grade. It's a question that needs to be answered before we move forward.
Brian, can you answer that question in regards to the agreement?
Brian Mitchell for the record. Zayo Group was, we had a very broad scope of work, as Jay has outlined. The The vendor that was selected had to be able to carry out both the construction work as well as the operations and maintenance and the commercialization of the network. So we required a single vendor that could oversee the network from start to finish. And that vendor has complied with all state requirements in that it will not be self-performing any of the work, but has hired a Nevada licensed contractor that will be doing all of the construction work according to the NRS. So this contract has been approved by the Board of Examiners and also has been blessed by state purchasing.
Okay, and Director Mitchell, this is Stavros Anthony. None of those bodies indicated that this contract violated NRS. Is that correct?
Brian Mitchell, for the record, that is correct, sir.
Okay. And our chief counsel, did you want to weigh in on that?
Well, my only comment would be it's an agreement between OSIT and ZAO, and the department isn't a party to that agreement.
Okay, and there's no indication that anything we're doing today violates any NRSs.
As far as I understand, it appears that it's gone through the process and had many eyes on it, and the approval of the Board of Equalization. And we haven't heard any objections on that point until now.
Okay. Okay, any other questions or comments from the board? All right, hearing none, is there a motion on agenda item 6?
Lieutenant Governor, this is Andy Matthews again. I'm wondering, since it was pulled, and I think that there may be some benefit to fleshing this out a bit more. I guess I would ask NDOT leadership what the practical implications would be if we were to continue to table this until the next meeting, just to make sure that everybody is comfortable. So I do think there may be some value in learning a bit more about this, but I'd like to know what the practical effect of that would be if we were to hold off on this.
Jay, and I'll have to check with Director Mitchell. I think they have some time restrictions with the grant itself. And I also want to note that this agreement is just between the OSIT and NDOT. It is not with the contractor. It is not with ZAGO. It is just basically giving the authorization for the funding that we promised in the federal grant application last year. So with the grant coming in, we are fulfilling that we will pay the $35.5 million as promised. And like I said, we have no connection to the contractor or to ZAGO, only with OSIT.
So what about the question of postponing this 30 days till the next meeting? Is there a problem with that?
I'm going to let Jay answer that, but I think there's a problem with the timing where OSIT needs to get it before another board.
That's correct, Director. From my understanding, and Brian can correct me, is that in terms of the timetable, is that once it would be presented in front of this board and approved, it would need to go to the BOE for approval. And so right now, I believe it's scheduled for the December, and the BOE will not look at it until this board has approved it. So as far as timeline, it would delay because it would push another approval process, and that could potentially impact the start time. And obviously, grants have stipulations into when they can start and when they need to end. So there is a risk associated with that because ideally, we would like to start soon for construction.
And I'd also like to point out, we are approving the funding for the grant on that. We are not approving the grant itself or the construction contract.
Or Member Matthews?
Thank you. Yeah. I understand and I appreciate that. And given, as was discussed earlier, that this has already been reviewed and okayed by Board of Examiners and by purchasing, then I'm comfortable enough to go forward. So with that, I will move for approval of item number 6 on the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Member Kalb, I second.
Are there any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion.
It's on.
Say it again.
Nay.
And your name?
Frank Leprick.
Okay, we have 1 no, motion carries. All right, we'll now go on to agenda item 7, request to increase the balance in the state highway revolving account.
And Assistant Director Felicia Denny will speak to this.
Good morning. Move this microphone a little closer. Good morning. As Tracy noted, I'm Felicia Denny, and we're asking for your help this morning with preparedness for planned financial system outages. Also here is James Mack, Chief Deputy Controller, to help answer any questions if needed. What we're asking to increase our state highway revolving account balance from $125,000 to $500,000 to be prepared for some planned system outages associated with moving to a new statewide financial system. This state highway revolving account is authorized under NRS 408-240, and the account can only be used for travel advances and reimbursements and for situations requiring prompt payment. And the revolving account is a bank account which has a maximum dollar limit. And when pertinent expenditures are incurred into the account, we ask the state controller to replenish it via a voucher weekly. And that weekly reimbursement can vary depending upon the transactions that have occurred. As I mentioned, the state is currently implementing a new statewide enterprise resource planning system, or as we like to call it, the ERP, and we're replacing our antiquated financial and HR systems. And this implementation is scheduled to take place in phases. The first phase, phase 1A, includes a system outage from December 20th, 2024 to January 2nd, 2025. And during this outage, the state controller will not be able to process payments as is usual. The impact to NDOT will be a little bit longer in duration because we process payment requests in our separate version of the financial system. We have additional fields and items that are not in the statewide system due to our project resources that we utilize and our federal requirements for reimbursement. So we have our own separate payment voucher and financial system, which requires additional transmission over to the statewide system. So because of that, we have an internal deadline of December 13th for divisions to provide us with payment documents to our accounting system and our purchasing groups for their review and approval, and then to submit this data to the controller so that they can process the payments we do have by the 20th. We're also expecting a high volume of work to be processed by the controller's office on that January 2nd date when a lot of invoices are pushed through, and understand there could be delays associated with people learning a new system and just little bugs and things that may occur. There is expected to be a second system outage for phase 1B when NDOT migrates to the new system, and that's scheduled for, our system migration is scheduled for July 1st. And so sometime in June, we're expecting not to be able to make payments out of our normal system during this period. So as a part of the system readiness and implementation, we've had quite a few meetings, and some of them were emergency preparedness meetings. The Office of Project Management, the State Controller's Office, State Treasurer, Chief Deputy Treasurer, State Emergency Management, and NDOT all met to discuss how we could be ready during this system outage. And one strategy that was discussed and was supported by the group was to increase our revolving account balance to the statutory limit so that we can make prompt payments during this time, during an outage, and not have a possible financial hardship for our employees who are traveling as well. And it's important to note that this request, we're not asking for additional spending authority. This isn't going to increase our budget at all. This is just simply a different mechanism to make payments during the outage. And we're limited to, of course, the statutes, the 408, 240 as to what this account can be used for. And we figured that we'd be better off asking for hopefully more money than we might need and not need it than to ask for less and be stuck where we're not able to make payments. We looked at our travel budget. We spend about $2.5 million a year agency-wide on travel, and about half of that is our construction crews traveling to get to the projects, but we also have quite a few other travel needs for folks going out to look at right-of-way settings and different projects and things like that. And so travel is a big part of how we do business. Because this first system outage is in the winter months, we're expecting a less of an impact. In the summer, starting in June, we're expecting a bigger impact on this and bigger needs for these accounts. So that's about, I have additional information if needed, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Felicia, this is Member Kalb. During my board briefing, we had gone over this and I didn't give them enough time. I was asking the approximate amount that we spend on per diem. It just seems like raising it. I mean, the current rate, correct me if I'm wrong, is 125,000, and you're asking to raise it 375,000. Is that correct?
That is correct. We're asking to quadruple it, basically. And the reason for that is that currently we don't process our crew per diem through this account. And during a system outage, we would have more travel to process through this account. And also, as I mentioned, we're wanting to be prepared in case there's some type of mudslide, flooding, who knows what, that we may encounter where we might need to move crews from one area to another. And so it's more of an emergency precaution.
So, like personally, I'm on board and I understand what you're asking for the times that you're out. I'm not necessarily supportive of raising it $375,000 permanently. So I don't know if there's a way of reintroducing this item to where we can make both worlds meet or do it for a limited time. I was talking to Andy and Andy said that there's a project also that plays into this that they're working on too. So I understand there's multiple facets.
The deputy director for the controller is here.
Thank you, Member Kalb, Mr. Lieutenant Governor James Smack, Chief Deputy Controller, for the record. The primary impetus behind this, I had organized as the Core NV Finance Product Owner several meetings to prepare for what's going to be a 6 business day outage that is going to be required in moving the legacy accounting system and having static data moved over into the new and improved cloud-based software as a service Advantage accounting system that we're going to be moving into. And one of the things that came up, of course, is what's coming on here with NDOT. My understanding is that once we're through this outage and when we're through the outage in June, which will probably be a similar length, would be my best educated guess at this point in time, although we haven't had those meetings yet as to determine exactly how long that outage will be, which will be primarily impacting NDOT and no other state agency. This first outage is going to be impacting every state agency in the state. So what we're looking at is making this increase to provide maximum flexibility for NDOT. I mean, another figure could be thrown out there, but if we have, I mean, you could think of the worst possible case scenario that we could run into. And of course, then we run into it on December 24th when we have no accounting system and not able to pay vendors on an emergency basis or pay additional employees during the holiday season to get out and do these type of tasks and everything like that. I understand your concern about this, and I believe, and Ms. Denny can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, that at any point in time after we have these 2 outages, the board could conceivably meet to reduce this back to $125,000 or to a figure hypothetically in the future. So, yeah, I guess you could put a date on it, but if you put a date on it, we could have additional delays in the implementation of the accounting system down the road too. So we might have to come back again and ask for an extension of that date. At this point in time, my thought would be go ahead and move it for the foreseeable future. And then it would be a discussion for maybe in the fall of this coming year to move it back to $125,000 or some smarter figure at that point in time. But that would of course be up to the pleasure of the board at that point. And I'm here for any questions as well.
I would also like to add this, as Felicia did state, it does not increase our spending authority. It does not change how the money is being spent at all. It is all just for reimbursement. All it really does is change where the money lies within the system so that during an outage or something like that, we can go ahead and pay the bills. It is paid for, it's the exact same expenditures. And like I said, it does not increase our budget. It does not increase my spending authority. It doesn't really change how the money's spent. It's just that it's in an account. And if there is no need for it, it's just not spent.
Any
This is-
question? Go ahead.
This is Andy Matthews. I just wanted to add something too. I mean, this is something I'm involved with from a number of different angles, as an NDOT board member and also as the controller. And also I'm on the executive committee for the Core NV project. And I've met with NDOT staff and been briefed in a very detailed way on this. And I think this is prudent, as the director and as Ms. Denny spoke to. This is not new authorized spending. This is simply maximizing flexibility. And as someone with some history now on this project, on the ERP, this is something that was launched a number of years ago. And while we don't anticipate further delays, we've also seen that this project has had its ups and downs. And I think setting a sunset date on this at this time probably isn't wise, just because of sort of what we've seen with the history of this project. But I would just add that I do think that once the dust has settled on this, I absolutely think this is something that should be revisited by the board in terms of what that dollar figure is going to be on a permanent basis going forward. I think that's something we ought to do. And I also would suggest that perhaps we get regular updates from NDOT on this, just in terms of, to what extent those funds are being used, perhaps on a quarterly basis, going forward. Just something I'm throwing out there, because I do think that an ongoing discussion on this would be helpful. So I don't know if the board would be open to that, having regular updates from staff on this between now and the completion of the project. That's something that I would welcome. But I do think overall, this is a prudent step, given where we are in this project and given some of the ups and downs we've seen in the past.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you condition it to where when the system's up and running 3 months afterwards, it's brought back to the board, and at that time we can set the right limit on it? So we give you guys the flexibility, so you have additional monies in case something happens up until the system's running, and then at that time you guys bring it back to us in 3 months, and then we can get that. You can bring back the dollar amount that you need.
We absolutely could do that. And I would ask that we go back after the phase 1B if possible, because that's expected to be a larger impact.
Yeah, I would agree. I would think that you want the whole system up and running, give yourself 3 months to work out the bugs, and then you bring it back and you bring back the dollar amount that you need so we can set the limit, the right dollar amount.
I will add, there's also a phase 2, and we don't know the impacts at that time. So we might, as we go farther along, revisit. James?
1B is great. If that works for you guys, it works for us.
James Snack, Chief Deputy Controller, for the record. After the 1B implementation, the Core NV team does not foresee any significant finance outages after that point. So I would think it would be prudent that if the implementation goes through on July 1st as expected, that probably a September date would probably be a good time to revisit this by the board. But again, that's at the pleasure of the board.
Okay. I make a motion. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, this is member Kalb. I completely support what you're proposing, the 3 months, in order to give NDOT time to go back through and look and figure out what that budget should be.
Any other, before we go to a motion, any other questions from the board?
This is Gary Puri. I want to also support the idea of having quarterly reports while this is going on.
All right, you want to try to put that into a motion?
No, I'll try. I'll make a motion to raise the limit to $500,000 with the condition that, once 1B is, completed, 3 months afterwards, it's back to the board to set the right dollar amount for your limit for your, fund. And then you'll also, on condition 2, you will bring us, reports every 3 months until it's, completed.
Thank you.
I'll second that. This is Andy.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That was agenda item 7. All right, we have 2 informational items only, so we'll go to agenda item 8, statewide radio upgrade presentation informational.
And again, Assistant Director Jay Pullen is going to kick it off and then hand it over.
For agenda item 8, Jake Rivette from the Traffic Operations Division will provide the presentation. Mr. Gravett is the Assistant Chief covering operational technology.
Good morning, Lieutenant Governor, members of the board. As Jay Pullen stated, my name is Jake Rivette, NDOT Traffic Operations for the record. I'm here today to talk to you about the history and progress of the P25 Nevada Shared Radio Project that began in 2018. So EDAX reached official end of life in 2017. Knowing that date was approaching, NDOT plus its 2 partner agencies, Nevada Energy or NVE and Washoe County, decided to pool their resources and enhance their single separate infrastructure into one large combined infrastructure for statewide public safety purposes. There was a lengthy RFP process that followed NDOT's procurement process that began with requirements gathering beginning in 2015, and the RFP itself was released in 2017. 3 vendors were considered for this project: Harris Communications, now L3 Harris, Motorola, and EF Johnson. Motorola attempted to sell their market offer to the state at that time because they could not meet technical requirements, and EF Johnson chose not to bid. Therefore, Harris was selected. The upgrade and migration program was awarded in September of 2018, shortly after the Transportation Board approved the agreement. And the P25 network is a new system that is phase 1, phase 2, 700 and 800 megahertz. Phase 2 is not a construction reference, but it's actually a technological reference, where in the old way of doing business, you could have one communication path on one radio channel. Phase 2 describes 2 communication paths on a single channel. So we've effectively doubled the capability of the system plus other upgrades. The Project 25 algorithm is a federal standard, and it's currently in use all the way across the US and throughout Lower Canada. And it's vendor agnostic, which means that if I have another vendor's radio in my pocket that's P25 capable, we can bring that on board the system in order to enhance interdepartment communications. Each member does have a separate contract with L3 Harris to design, build, and deploy their portion of the system's infrastructure, with NDOT having 78 austere sites, NVE having 38, and Washoe County rounding out the 134 total with 18. Next slide. This is a snapshot of NDOT-supported public safety agencies. This list is 48 strong, and we continue to grow. As a matter of fact, 2 more agencies have joined under NDOT in the past 2 weeks since I prepared this brief. In addition to what you're seeing on this screen, we also have the entirety of NVE's northern and southern utilities fleet, and Washoe County is responsible for another 37 separate agencies on their portion of the system. And with the new enhancements that P25 brings, a user in Washoe County can travel to Las Vegas and then turn around and travel all the way up to Elko and maintain communications with their home base, whereas the old system that proved to be rather problematic. Next slide, please. We have experienced some program challenges since implementation. Specifically, there were some startup issues with our vendor. They did not have the proper staffing required for working in Nevada's austere environments, and that took time to correct, onboarding new people, making sure they were trained appropriately, and getting this project growing. We also quickly realized that the original construction schedule for this program was overly aggressive and did not necessarily take into account such things as our heavy winters or the length of time it would take for federal agencies to approve new construction leases, such as the BLM. Prevailing wage. This project was not let under prevailing wage, but due to a Nevada Supreme Court decision in 2019 upon public works programs, this project was revisited and it was deemed to fall under prevailing wage requirements at that time. Unfortunately, this did have the effect of basically tripling our labor costs for the program. COVID-19 hit this program just as hard as it hit everybody. Everything from manufacturing to office work to field work ground to a standstill. And then once we were able to overcome COVID and emerge from there, we ran right into the global supply chain nightmare that everybody experienced. And this affected manufacturing, delivery, cost, where we were seeing lead times of 8 weeks for a new comm shelter at a cost of approximately $95,000. We were seeing wait times of over a year, and the cost had increased up to over $200,000 for that exact same shelter. Inclement weather. We've had some rather extreme winters over the last couple of years, record snowfall up in Tahoe. This has the unfortunate effect of limiting our site access for some of our more higher elevation sites. Often cases, we're not able to access the site for construction or remediation work until late June, and the snow's back by October. So this limited window is very valuable to us because when the snow comes back, we're absolutely done. We can't come back until the next thaw. And when you're driving 6 hours just to get to the location in good weather, inclement weather can prove to be very problematic. We've also experienced some rather severe fires. For instance, the fire that occurred a couple of years ago down in Mount Charleston actually burnt down the NVE communication site in that location, and they are still negotiating today with the landowner in order to be authorized to rebuild that site for this new system. And we are now seeing the effects of inflation. Real inflation effects in the state are above 20%, and we're seeing cost increases across the board for construction activities above 30%. As of, for instance, in 2018, steel cost $680 per ton. In 2023, that cost had increased to over $1,350 per ton. That's just an example. And without steel, we can't build communications towers. And without communications towers, we don't have a radio system. Next slide, please. Project cost history. The funding for this project is 100% state funds. It's paid out of a mix of highway funds, general funds, and some fee-funded agencies such as the Taxi Cab Authority or the DMV. The original FY19 NDOT budget plan for this program was $63.5 million, with a completion schedule to be effected in FY25. Construction was expected to be completed in FY24. Unfortunately, this was pre-COVID. During COVID, during FYs 20 through 23, we were able to maintain the budget estimate at $63.5 million, but coming out of COVID, we realized that we could no longer continue to absorb the cost increases that were being seen on this project. And at that time, we had requested an increase to $69.5 million and updated our construction schedule to be completed in FY26. Our current estimates for FY26 and 27 has increased to $74 million, but this does include a $2 million contingency in case of future unknowns. And we've stabilized the program schedule to be completed in FY27. The members did absorb some of the construction and remediation activities back from L3 Harris over the course of this project in an attempt to re-accelerate coming out of COVID. But unfortunately, this does have the second effect of increasing some costs because we needed construction managers and additional staff in order to maintain those responsibilities. I would like to point out that with inflation being over 20%, we've maintained a project increase of less than 16%. So we're beating inflation by a few points. We're doing what we can in order to keep this program on task and under budget. Next slide, please. This is a current snapshot of our financials for NDOT's portion of this project. The current L3 Harris contract is $44.6 million. That was reduced from 50.6, and that extra funding was reallocated to NDOT for some of those remediation and construction activities. Our project expenditures as a whole are $44.3 million. The L3 Harris project agreement cost is 24.8 out of a scheduled 31.8 for programmatics and engineering, things like that. And NDOT has made 7.3 million in radio purchases out of a planned 9.5. But NDOT combined with its user agencies have purchased a total of $16.6 million worth of radios at a 72% market discount based on our agreement. This would be $60 million in state costs without these discounts. So we're providing a good cost savings to our users. And we've also negotiated extended warranties on all the radios they procure that don't actually start until we accept the system as a whole. So any users in Las Vegas or Reno are actually getting free warranty until we complete Region 3 in the northeastern portion of the state. And our estimate for remaining construction will be 18.4 million. Next slide, please. In addition to the challenges, we've also seen some significant program successes. For instance, milestones. Out of the 22 project milestones on this program, we've successfully completed 18 of them, with only Region 2 and Region 3 system installation and formal acceptance remaining. We migrated the system core approximately 2 years ago, and it's been working perfectly ever since. As a matter of fact, the new cores are running the old system, EDAX, and the P25 system that we've activated simultaneously today with no issues. We just recently activated the Las Vegas area, or the southern third of the state, and we're getting reports by our users that it is leaps and bounds above what EDAX was able to provide. For mobile radio installations, which was a significant effort for this project, we've completed Region 1 NDOT mobile installations, and we're above 95% for the Southern Command for DPS. Region 2 mobile efforts are complete for Reno and its surrounding areas for NDOT, and Region 3 is currently underway with an expectation to be completed with that effort next June. And our user agency installs statewide are above 85% of the 2018 scope that was let with this agreement. For site remediation, we've successfully completed 55 of 57 locations. And for project construction activities, we've completed 15 of 21 locations. We've also entered into communication with the state of Utah to bring an ISSI gateway between our two systems. ISSI stands for Inter RF Subsystem Interface and enables cross-border communications between their state and ours. This will be an enhancement for any cross-border high-speed pursuits for law enforcement. Any fires or EMS respondent issues along the border on either side. Their agents can work on our system and our agents can work on theirs. Our next agenda for this capability will be speaking to the Southern Nevada Area Communications Council, or SNAC, as it's commonly referred to bridge the state system with the Las Vegas metro system. And as I've stated, we continue to grow on a weekly basis. When Region 2 is activated, Carson City plans on bringing their entire public works apparatus on board the system, and that's approximately 800 to 900 new radios at that time alone. Next slide, please. Why we do what we do. On the left is a letter from the DPS radio manager about an officer-involved shooting that just recently occurred down in Valley of Fire. Valley of Fire is the new radio site you see on the top right of the screen. EDAX has never existed down there. It's been a communications nightmare historically for the last 20 years. Sergeant Meyer wanted to be here today to talk about the communication system and the capabilities that it provided during that officer-involved shooting. However, operational commitments prohibited that. But him and his leadership chain did send along some notes stating that for the first time in over 20 years, interdepartmental comms were available in the Valley of Fire area. Rangers, DPS, EMS, and fire were all able to communicate with each other seamlessly. Troopers as far out as Pioche and in some of the Las Vegas metro areas such as Indian Springs are reporting excellent coverage enhancements and excellent communications ability. And they couldn't be happier. Next slide. That concludes this brief, and I'm available for any questions.
Again, Stavros Anthony, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. Any questions or comments from the board? All right, hearing none. Thank you for that information. And we'll now go on to agenda item 9, fuel system upgrade presentation.
This will also be covered by Jay Pullen. It's his show today.
For agenda item 9, I will be presenting an overview of the fueling system upgrade. For the record, my name is Jay Pullen, NDOT Assistant Director of Operations. Next slide. We will be briefly covering the system, its users, and fuel system benefits, highlight the legacy system challenges and why we initiated the fueling infrastructure upgrade, then provide a program status and conclude with the upcoming fuel site projects. Next slide. NDOT has a total of 54 sites statewide. The fueling system is used by 86 entities. The 3 biggest customers of the system are NDOT, State Motor Pool, and Nevada Highway Patrol. The statewide fueling system availability and reliability is mission critical for operations. I wanted to highlight 3 benefits. First is emergency readiness and operational resiliency. Unlike commercial fueling centers, the system prioritizes state and local agencies. Additionally, the fuel is not only for equipment and vehicles, it is there to support backup generators, such as keeping our road operations centers functional during a power outage. Second, the fuel is available 24/7 throughout the state, especially in remote locations. And lastly, the fuel is available for users at wholesale prices. Next slide. NDOT relies on the fueling system for the mobility of crews to address maintenance, weather concerns, and emergencies, such as earthquakes, flooding, and fire. The picture below the fuel pump is from the most recent Davis fire here in Washoe Valley. In 2016, the majority of the fueling sites were constructed in the 1990s. With pumps over 30 years old, it makes purchasing equipment parts a challenge. Even with the new site construction, for compatibility purposes, NDOT was using the older generation technology. For system reliability, we experienced chronic failures with the legacy card reader system. Also, during hot weather, some sites would experience vapor locking. Vapor locking is when the gasoline vaporizes and the system is unable to pump fuel. I also want to note that some sites still use the key lock system, also known as barrel keys. This system is no longer supported and replacement parts are hard to source. For environmental and safety, many of these existing tanks are underground, and we want to prevent potential leaking tanks from contaminating the soil. So above ground, double-walled tanks with proper containment design and protection reduces potential spills and system maintenance, as well as adds longevity to the tanks. For project prioritization, NDOT evaluated its fueling sites and prioritized the replacement by a set of criteria. We focused on safety, environmental issues, infrastructure age and condition, system reliability, and user needs. The prioritized fueling station lists were grouped into phases for design, permitting, and construction. Next slide. Since 2016, 28 fuel sites have been upgraded. I wanted to highlight a few areas. Not only did we focus on replacing underground tanks with above ground for maintenance and environmental purposes, we did evaluate the tank size. For example, some locations only have a 500-gallon tank capacity, which means during busy times, we could experience fuel shortages. There was also concrete and pavement work, in some areas more extensive than others, and this was to provide spill containment and improve our stormwater drainage. We have been migrating over to the modern fueling system and tracking technology. This includes updated fuel card reader systems, the ease of use and tracking purposes, updating the sensor and alert systems, and the emergency shutoff. The next slides will show the project expenditures, followed by pictures from the most recent fueling site upgrade. Next slide. The graph shows the expenditures over the past bienniums. Since fiscal year 2016, we've invested 18.3 million in our system. It is worth noting in fiscal year 22 and 23, there was a significant reduction of construction work. This was the result of the COVID pandemic, which disrupted the schedule for both design and construction. Let me take that back. Disrupted the schedule for design and permitting. With staff shortages in permit agencies, it extended or delayed the timeline to acquire permits. In some cases, these delays were in the magnitude of 12 to 16 months. Also, what had to be considered was we had to work around the construction window, which many of these projects were deferred into the next construction season. Next slide. This picture is of a diesel pump on the Mount Rose maintenance yard. It was constructed July of 1990, and its reliability currently has been poor. What you see, the Veeder-Root is the fuel site controller. Next slide. Now you can see the same pump has been replaced with an above ground tank. The Mount Rose site is currently operational, and there is some final construction that will be completed soon. Next slide. The upcoming construction projects consist of Incline, Battle Mountain Site, Austin, Big Smoky, and Carson City Maintenance Yard. I did want to point out, if you look at Battle Mountain location, this was a case where we are upsizing the tanks for both diesel and unleaded to meet our operational needs. And that concludes my brief presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Stavros Anthony, again, thank you for that presentation. Any comments from the board, questions?
Lieutenant Governor, I just wanted to make the statement that the governor had a lot of questions about the radio sites, and he has also been fully briefed on this, but that was the main reason for bringing it forward, was to basically show that the work that we do on the radio sites, and also the same thing on the fuel system. These systems are used by much, much more than just NDOT, but we maintain it for the state on that. And the fueling ones, it is taking a long cycle now because they were built all about the same period, and they all failed at the same period. And around the state, you get, we would have failed sites like the South Yard in Vegas, or we'd have it out in Ely or things like that, which make it very difficult for our, our maintenance guys as they go around the state. Also, a lot of these fuel areas, particularly in the rural ones, if there is an incident, a fire like Cold Springs, we often, our maintenance yards become the center, the command center, because they can come in and get fuel and rations. So I just wanted to highlight some of the work that they're doing. But so you won't have any more presentations for a little while.
I think the presentations are good. So it keeps the board informed on what's going on. So I have no problems with these presentations. All right, agenda item 10, contracts, agreements, and settlements. Are there any questions or comments on agenda item 10? All right, hearing none. Item 11, are we having an executive session?
We do not need one.
All right, so we don't need an executive session. Agenda item 12, public comment. This is a time for just general public comment. Anybody wants to talk to the transportation board? There'll be 3 minutes per speaker. So anyone in here would like to speak to the board?
We do have a person that plans to call in, Ken Moen.
Okay.
I'm present.
Okay.
If you could state your name.
Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Ken Moen. I'm the president of the Nevada Aviation Association, and addressing the board today to discuss who we are and what we do and why we do it. Nevada Aviation Association was founded 24 years ago as a airports association, and in the last 5 years, we, through a strategic planning process, re-identified our organization with a focus on development of aviation in the state as a whole. You may not be aware of this, but perhaps you are. that a week from today in Las Vegas is the National Business Aircraft Association Conference and Exhibition. And that organization will bring 25,000 people from all around the world to talk business aviation. And there are vendors and a static display out at Henderson Airport. And many of these companies would be great opportunities for economic development in the state. But what it highlights is how important aviation is to the state of Nevada. As the most mountainous state in the union, hardly a straight line unless you're going from Reno to Ely is pretty straight. But overall, the support of aviation is critical for business and also lifestyle, i.e. emergency medical evacuations from some of these remote communities, as well as participation of medical clinics in these communities. Otherwise, people have to drive several hours to get there. There's also some changes coming to the industry, and those changes involve advanced aeronautics. And you'll see some of this at this convention. They're going to have advanced air mobility operating between the convention center and Henderson Airport where the static display is. What we want to highlight is how beneficial aviation is to the state. In the last legislative session, we were able to get a $2 million appropriation to the Nevada Fund for Aviation, which offsets local grant matches for federal aviation airport improvement grants. And we also formed the Air Service Development Commission. And as a matter of fact, I'm on the Air Service Development Commission as a commissioner appointed by the governor. And on the other line, I am in the meeting. So I was pleased that I can be able to jump back and forth. And I want to thank you for your time, and you'll be hearing more from us. And I appreciate the board's attention. Have a wonderful day.
Oh, well, thank you for giving us an update on the Nevada Aviation Association. I appreciate it. And we'll definitely keep in touch. Thank you. Any other public comment here one more time? Anybody in Las Vegas have public comment?
No one here in the South.
Anyone else?
I just have one comment to make before the end. We did speak with the governor. At this time, there are no planned agenda items for November, so we are not planning a November board meeting. But I will confirm that send a confirmation email to everyone at the end of this week. I'm giving everyone here one more chance to double check with their divisions if there's any item that needs to come before the board before actually canceling it.
And if it's canceled, we'll have a board meeting in December?
Yes, we will have a board meeting in December.
All right, hearing no other public comment, we'll go to item number 13. Is there a motion to adjourn? Nobody wants to adjourn?
This is Member Kalb, motion to adjourn.
All right, second?
Second, Andy Matthews.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Very good meeting. Appreciate it.